who you're going to call Ghost Hunters. Ghost Hunters is the game that the Oliver twins, Philip and Andrew, did after Super Robin Hood. They'd done Super Robin Hood on the Amstrad CPC, and then their next job was to port that to the Sinclair Spectrum. For Ghost Hunters, what they decided to do was develop the two games in parallel and to make the game easier to port to the Spectrum. So you can see on the loading screen here, it is mode 1 on the Amstrad. And like Super Robin Hood, it loads up part of the display on the loading screen, that Ghost Hunters logo and the Rambo clone on the left, whose name is Hunk Studbuckle. And the aim of the game is to rid the mansion of ghosts and to rescue your brother who's trapped within the mansion. Nicely detailed graphics here on the menu screen. Notice there's a 2-player option, which we'll come to when we're actually playing the game. And some, to players of Super Robin Hood, familiar speech. Perhaps it's one of the Oliver twins shouting at Ghost Hunters, I'm not quite sure. Speech seems a little bit more defined than in Super Robin Hood as well. Also nagging messages like don't shoot yourself when you shoot yourself. Basically, you're running around, but when you hold down fire, you move that cursor around to shoot the baddies. And yes, it is a little bit confusing until you get used to it, because all the time you're shooting baddies, your character is left absolutely helpless. For example, that Count Dracula we just shot up the top there, if you leave him too long, he turns into a bat, which you can't shoot, who comes after you. The graphics are nicely defined, but you've always got the feeling with this that it's designed to be easily ported to the Spectrum. And the main character flickers something chronic. He really does. The power-ups are the same as Super Robin Hood. Instead of hearts, you've got these little boiling beaker things you pick up, and it shouts Ghost Hunters. The mechanic of shooting the baddies with the cursor while holding on the fire button does get easier with time, but the main character doesn't handle as well as Robin Hood does in that game. It just seems to be a little bit more fiddly and a little bit more difficult to jump and a little bit less fluid. Now, we talked about topping up your energy, and you see the macho energy down the bottom here. It's just macho energy. And you have a terror meter on the left-hand side there. Now, you drop macho energy, where the higher the terror meter goes, basically, the more you drop energy, the faster it goes. There's items dotted around the screens. You can see that crystal ball, you think, or the quill up here. And what you've got to do is collect them, and then they activate lifts. Again, exactly the same as Super Robin Hood with the keys, except this time these nagging messages really get on your nerves. Don't shoot yourself. Well, duh. And in any case, you don't lose energy by shooting yourself, so what's the problem? You also got to keep an eye out for what appears on these screens. The enemies always respawn in the same places. There's that little man in the coffin down there that's quite difficult to spot. The colour scheme's a little bit garish, this red and blue. That just doesn't really... It's not very sympathetic to the graphics, really. They are nicely detailed, but again, it's nice to use the mobile on the Amstrad, but it's like better colour choices really would be nice. It's just red and it looks unnatural. I mean, I know it's supposed to be a spooky game, but it just perhaps choose some different colours to red and blue there and keep the white and the black. I don't know. The necklace. My macho energy is dropping. Oh dear, my terror meter's going up. This whole... It's a slightly clumsy mechanic, it has to be said. It just doesn't work. There's about 21 screens in the game, so it's not a massive game. And like Super Robin Hood, where Marion is at the top of the castle, again, your brother Chuck Studbuckle is at the top of the building. The game, if Super Robin Hood was cashing in on Robin of Sherwood, then this is cashing in on Ghostbusters, but also Rambo. If you look at the character on the left-hand side of the screen there, and it's a very visually grabbing cover, very spooky. Also a hint of some of these demons Thriller as well on the cover. I'm getting Thriller Michael Jackson vibes from the cover. Just going up here again, see if I've activated any of the lifts. It's just a little bit fiddly, has to be said. You can't shoot all of the baddies either. The spiders can't be shot, and some of the other baddies can't be shot as well. Some of the bats, when Dracula turns into a bat, you can't shoot him. Macho energy is now low. I think I'm probably done for, unless I get to that beaker up there in time, because that lift there has now been activated by, I think, either the crystal ball. You can't shoot I can't shoot that either. Either by the crystal ball, I've died. Crystal ball or the necklace. Anyway, I'm dead, and now I sink into the ground. But I've got a high score, so that makes up for it, I suppose. Over to the Sinclair Spectrum, I'm going to define the controls here. So I'm using a Sinclair-style joystick. 2-player mode works actually quite well. First player controls Hunk's stud buckle. The second player controls the cursor, the gun sights that move around. And it works much better. Had a lot of fun with this playing with my friends. Much more fun than I did playing it on my own. And on the Spectrum, yeah, it's pretty ugly. It's got to be said, this red colour scheme, and you can change it to be blue, which looks much nicer, and we'll switch to that later. Forwarded the game on here to one of the later screens. The main player sprite flickers something chronic as well. Yeah, every other sprite doesn't, so I don't know quite the reason for that. There's no in-game music on the Amstrad, and it's a 48K only game here on the Spectrum, so nothing other than noises, but you do get the speech here on the Specky, which is nice as well. Again, the Spectrum is just having suffered here from having had it quickly ported from the Amstrad. It looks the same, but it's just this. It's a little bit ugly. It's all monochromatic, and you get the feeling of something that's been done quite quickly. The macho energy on this version is on the left, and the terameter is down the bottom there. It doesn't work as well as that analog gauge setup they had on the Amstrad. You're looking at a terameter, is that the energy? Is the macho energy the energy? I mean, I know because I've come from the Amstrad version, but perhaps Specky owners might find this a little bit confusing. I don't know. There's the map. You can see the entire screen there. You get that if you pause the game. See, yeah, about 20 screens to play. And this is what the game looks like with the blue colour scheme, and it's much, much nicer. Why this isn't the default, I don't know, because, okay, it's not kind of spooky and atmospheric as the red, but goodness me, that red would have looked dreadful on a UHF connection on a 1980s television. It looks bad enough on RGB. On a +2 here, goodness knows what that would look like with all the dot crawl on a issue 4S 48K. Up in one of the towers now, and what you've got to do on this screen is wait for one of the baddies to spawn, jump on his head, and jump up that ladder. Now, there he is there. I've killed him there. So just try, and there we go. Up we go. Don't know if that's intentional or not. I've probably found a cross. It's a bit like a Chiller by Mastertronic. But don't know if that's intentional or not. But yeah, that's the way I decided to do it. Now, actually, back in the day, I played Ghost Hunters before I played Super Robin Hood. So this is my first introduction to the Oliver twins, and I actually bought Super Robin Hood off the back of this, so I must have quite liked it, but it feels like a step down from Super Robin Hood, certainly on the Amstrad. On the Amstrad, Super Robin Hood had mode 0 graphics and looked quite nice. On this, yeah, it's high resolution, but it just has a tinge of ugliness about it in its colour choices. And on the Amstrad and Spectrum, why does the main sprite have to flicker so much? It's a shame when actually the rest of the graphics are fairly nicely defined, certainly on the Amstrad, but the main player sprite has to flicker. But the biggest gripe is the control system. It seems really clever, but it leaves you horribly exposed when you're holding down fire to shoot the baddies. Your player can't move, so anything else can attack you from around the screen, so you're left exposed all the time you're trying to deal with baddies. Now, you don't have this problem in 2-player mode, which makes the game much more enjoyable if you're playing it with a friend. And that's certainly what I found back in the 1980s playing it with my friends. this was a game we could play together. And even, just thinking aloud, imagine how much fun it would be with that second player with a light gun picking off the baddies. That would be amazing. That would make this a really, really fantastic game. As it stands, as a one player is a little bit fiddly and frustrating, but still good fun. As a two-player game, it's actually really good fun. For cooperative gameplay, I think it's a little bit of a trailblazer.